Hi guys, welcome back to We Should Talk, a pop culture interview series from In the Know. I'm your host Gibson Johns, and this week on the podcast we have Garcelle Beauvais from The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. She's also a co-host of The Real. She has her own podcast, Going to Bed with Garcelle, which was a fellow Webby Award honoree in the Best Interview Podcast category alongside We Should Talk. So we were in the same company there, and she's so great. She's such a legend, and we weren't really allowed to talk about Housewives because she was not promoting Housewives. She was promoting her work with Tenna, talking about, stigma around women's issues as they get older and things like that. And we still had a great conversation. But if you're looking for Housewives tea, you're not going to get it here. I did check in with her about Housewives and sort of how she's feeling, and also like preparing for the reunion. But other than that, there's not that much Housewives, but I think it's still such a great discussion about important stuff. Housewives is still one of the only places on TV where women of a certain age get to be their full, messy, imperfect, whatever selves. They get to show any part of their life they want. And, that's still kind of a rarity on TV if you really think about it. And so to have her kind of speaking on that portion of it, was really interesting to hear about. And she clearly is kind of turning a different corner in her career. Like it was fueled by Housewives, but now she's on The Real, and now she has her podcast, and she's really, instead of being known as an actress and for the characters that she plays, she's known for herself. And I think that has totally changed her career in a really great way, and she's clearly enjoying herself. So keep listening for my interview with Garcelle Beauvais, star of The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, co-host of The Real, host of Going to Bed with Garcelle podcast. And please enjoy it. And also please rate and review and subscribe to We Should Talk on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, so we're here with Garcelle Beauvais, who is a true multi-hyphenate in Hollywood. She is co-host of The Real, an actress, a Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, and a podcast host. Garcelle, how are you?
I'm great, Gibson. How are you?
I'm great. As a longtime fan of Housewives, it's fun to always get to meet you guys. But I feel like I've been aware of you since long before the show even existed. So it's extra special to be able to have time with you because you're such a presence in Hollywood and have been for so long. So it's really fun.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've been here for a minute, and I'm thrilled to be here with you.
And you're I feel like your stock right now is so high, and your time is so valuable as well. So Garcelle, I think whenever I interview somebody who's on one of the Housewives show, I just like to check in. And obviously today is not about Housewives, but when you're in season, when it's airing, I know it's a lot for you guys. I know there's a lot of extra commentary and feedback happening.
Woo!
How are you doing just now that the season is really kind of in the thick of it?
I am doing better today. Had you asked me last week, I would have been like, I'm not so sure. It's a fun show. It's also a tough show. Mm-hmm. And I think it's one thing, to shoot it. It's another thing for it to air. And then you find out what people are saying. And then the world weighs in. So it's multi-layered. And sometimes the world weighing in can be a little tough on your psyche and your spirit.
I'm sure, but you must feel kind of like, now that this is your second go around, that you must feel like you're at least more used to that process. I'm assuming.
A little bit. I mean, I think it's always hard because, as an actor, you're a character, and if they talk about the character, you're like, so what? That's not me, right?
Totally.
And this is different because it's really, truly you and your character as a person. So that can sting a little bit, but I think that's part of what people love about the show is the fact that they feel so invested. I wish they would do this more. I wish they would sort of like root for their favorites, yell at the TV, but don't write about it on Twitter.
Exactly. I think,
that would be nice.
And to me, it's sort of like, at the end of the day, we all enjoy this show. And so I think it's good to uplift everybody who's on it, and so that's what I wish more people would kind of feel. And, again, today, yeah. And, today is not, obviously we're not here to talk about the Housewives. But I do think that one thing that has to do with what we're talking about is that people do sort of dismiss the show. People who aren't fans of the show dismiss it as being sort of superfluous or maybe bad for female representation or maybe exploitative. But I think that if what they don't realize is that the show really is still one of the rare instances on TV where women above a certain age can really be their full, imperfect, messy selves, just like anybody else is. And I think that that to me is one of the biggest positives of all of these shows. And I'm curious for you, because you are so open about some quote unquote taboo topics.
Yeah.
Was that something that went through your mind when you decided to join the show, or is that an appeal of this platform that comes with being a housewife?
You know what's really interesting is I never even thought about it that way until you just said it right now. So what I do feel is great about the show is it's right. We have women over a certain age, and normally you're put to the side at this age. And it's really refreshing to see women, being independent, successful. All the women have businesses and we're all doing things. So it's really, I wish that inspirational, aspirational part of it was highlighted a little bit more, because you're absolutely right. We all look great. We take care of our bodies. We do all these things. And it's really great to highlight that you don't have to be in your 20s to be living a really good life. And I think that's why, I partnered with Tenna, because I feel like we also talk about real things on that show. Whether
Absolutely.
It's what you're going through with a relationship, we talk about sex, we talk about all these things. And I think so many times, like you said, there are taboo subjects that we don't talk about, like aging and menopause and incontinence. I mean, like all those things that happen to everybody, but we're so embarrassed to talk about it. We're
right.
Like, when you say your age, you kind of like blurt it out real quick. And I think we need to stop doing that, because it is a privilege to be here right now at this age.
Totally. And it just makes if you really think about it, it just makes no sense for there to be stigma around talking about your age and what have you, because I mean, you guys, you just said, like, you guys you guys look so amazing. And it's like, I just think that, like, one, if you think about that, but also it's just like, you learn so much with age, and like, I'm still in my 20s and I still feel like I have so much more to learn. And like, I'm like, people talk about.
Absolutely you do.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm excited for that. And I think that makes as the decades come, like, that makes it a more valuable lived experience, and you must feel that.
I definitely feel that. And listen, what's the alternative, right? You're either going to age or you're not. And I think that's what's really important, that we have to really stop focusing on the age and focus on where you are. What are the milestones for you, and what's happening in your body, what's happening in your life. And this past year and a half, we've all been cooped up at home. I feel like women especially have been doing a lot, whether it's homeschooling, taking care of the family, going food shopping or ordering in. And I feel, and I don't know if you agree with this, but we tend to work a lot longer from home, because you're not taking a lunch break, you're not leaving and driving home, all those things. So we tend to be working a lot more. And I feel like also this past year and a half, women have not put themselves first. We take care of the kids and everything else. And even like with doctor's appointments, a lot of people didn't do it because out of being nervous about being in a doctor's office or just being out of the house, that it's time for us to do self-care. And self-care is not just, glam and working out. It's also taking care of your body and knowing what your body needs and talking about it, making it, you can talk to your girlfriends. If we're talking and we're having lunch, why can't we talk about, hey, listen, did you start feeling, any menopausal symptoms? I think we should be able to talk about stuff like that and not make it so taboo, and also not make it so unsexy.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's it's almost like a reframing that needs to happen, and I think that you're kind of at the forefront of that. It's just sort of like, just think about it differently. Like, yeah, we're all primed to think about these things, especially women are primed to think about like menopause as something that you should dread. But like, I feel like it's just about a rejiggering of the mind,
Exactly. I love that. That's absolutely right.
Yeah. And I think, I love going to bed with Garcelle. And I think that to me, like, that is the sort of maybe the avenue that I feel like you ask these really direct questions of all your guests. Like, it's like, you have Andy Cohen on and you're asking whether he's a top or a bottom, but then you also have, you have Dr. Jacqueline Kim Whitley on, and you're talking about, like pretty intense, like sexual topics I think generally you don't really hear three Black women talking about that in a really open forum a lot of the time. And so I think do you feel like with going to bed with Garcelle, do you feel like that sort of represents like your most unfiltered, unedited place to really ask those kind of direct questions?
Yes, for sure. And sometimes I wake up in a cold sweat because of it. But at the end of the day, I'm really happy. I mean, this was something that I was doing at home once a month I'd have girlfriends over at the house or couples or an eclectic group. And we'd end up gossiping, drinking, reading, and talking about sex. So it really has morphed into this great podcast that I think everybody leaves feeling a little bit more liberated, because these are the things. I didn't grow up talking like this. Like, my mom never talked about sex. We never talked about body things, which is also another thing about, if you don't hear your parents talking or your mom talking about menopause or any of those things, then it feels like it's something you should never talk about, right?
Totally.
So I think with the podcast, keeping it real, like, what we're doing with Tenna, having those real conversations about what happens with your body is all a way of saying it's okay. We're all in this together.
Mm-hmm. You are always so open on The Real, on Going to Bed with Garcelle, on Housewives, and your work with Tenna. And we're talking about these taboo topics for women. And I'm curious for you, I mean, you said growing up, you guys didn't talk about sex or anything like that, kind of in your household. When you entered the industry, was there like a moment that you kind of early on remember sort of like realizing that there were different standards for women when it came to talking about sex or certain topics? Like, do you remember a moment from early on in Hollywood?
Yeah, I don't remember a specific moment, but I know for me, like you said, growing up, we weren't allowed to talk about it. And also growing up, I learned that, women were having sex to please the man, right?
Right.
And it wasn't until I got older, went to New York and started feeling myself, if you will, that I realized that there's power in owning your sexuality. There's power in owning, your body and feeling comfortable with it. So it became an evolution over time that I felt comfortable enough that my mother wouldn't be, behind me with a stick, that I could talk about it, and it was okay. And it's been really sort of liberating to be able to own your sexuality and talk to women about it. And I have men that, listen to my podcast and go, I've learned so much. And I'm like, that is awesome.
No, totally. And and again, it's like, you're talking about things that literally don't even get talked about. Like, it's like they're probably getting talked about in like different corners of the internet, but like in a mainstream setting, like you really don't hear these conversations. And it's like, these are things that people want to hear about. They just are too afraid to ask,
Yeah. And I think so many times when women are together, and not all women, of course, but it's like, oh, I love your bag. I love your shoes. How are the kids? But we don't check in and say, boy, we're now in our 50s and things are changing. I wake up in the morning, there might be a little ache, or I'm feeling, menopausal, symptoms. Like, we need to be able to talk about that. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not anything that's happening just to you. And I think the more we have those conversations, our kids will also feel comfortable. So we're going to pass it on to the next generation. And I feel like for me, partnering with Tenna, this is exactly what we want to talk about in terms of like what's happening to women's health. And self-care is not just taking a bath and working out. And, it's about really taking care of yourself and going to the doctor and, doing a checkup and having a list so that you talk to your doctor about it when you're there. So all those things I feel are really important.
Yeah, it really is a health thing too. And I think what's interesting that you said earlier was, you said that, during the pandemic, a lot of us like skipped doctor's appointments and things like that for various reasons. And, now it's like, we're seeing kind of like the horizon open up and it's thank God, and we're all having more fun and we're seeing people, but it's sort of like, I think we're all sort of jumping back into the fun, but we're not remembering sort of those other things that we maybe put on the back burner too.
Right. Exactly right. So for me, I think part of what I've learned to do, even if it's like 5 minutes, 20 minutes, taking time for me, whether it's listening to music or saging or anything, just really sort of coming back into me. I think that's really important.
Definitely. And Garcelle, I'm curious for you because, obviously you've been around in Hollywood for a long time as an actress at playing characters and as part of really popular projects and movies and shows. But obviously Housewives and now The Real, you are now known on a different level for Garcelle. And I feel like people it's kind of multiplied in the ways that people are knowing your personality and who you are beyond the characters that you play. And I'm curious if you feel like that has sort of opened you up to having more of these dialogues because you do have these platforms where you can be yourself and not somebody else.
Absolutely. I think that's what's really been sort of like the transition for me, because it's one thing I feel like actors are in a way put in a box and you kind of see them in the window. But when you're doing, a talk show, a daily talk show, 5 days a week, you're really giving your opinions, right? It's all what I feel and, whether it relates to me or how I make it relate to me, whatever topic we're discussing. And it has become that people really are getting to know me, as well as housewives. They're in my house. The cameras are in my house. They're in my car. They get to see the good and the bad and, all that. So I do feel like people are getting a different glimpse of who I am.
And it must be fun for you on The Real to be able to do that with 3 other women who again, it's just like, it's such an open forum. And it's just, one, you must feel really bonded with these women, but 2, it must feel also good to have this other sort of club of a tight knit group that you can really kind of trust too.
Yeah, totally. And that's what's really been great. Even though we're all women of color, we all have, diverse thoughts and different ways of seeing things. And that's what's been really fun. And we do so, even if we disagree, we disagree respectfully, which is really great. Yeah. And they've learned some things. I've learned some things. So it's been really, it's where I'm supposed to be. I love that job more than anything. It's been really, really fun.
And it was fun. And now you get to cross pollinate. You had Adrian and you had Janine on Going to Bed with Garcelle. Yes. And it's sort of like this, it all kind of feeds itself, which must be really fun for you. It's like all your worlds are sort of blending.
Yeah, it's really, really great. I have to get the housewives on the podcast. I have to see who is willing to divulge about their sex life.
Who would be your top choice for that?
I would love Erica. She's not doing any press right now, but I would really love Erica. I would really love Sutton because I'd be curious of what she's doing in the bedroom.
And you guys have struck up that.
Is she rolling while she's in the bedroom?
Hey, I mean, whatever gets you there, it's like she loves that roller.
She loves her. I've never seen that thing before in my life. I think it's hilarious.
What about a dream guest for Going to Bed with Garcelle that is not a housewife? Is there somebody who you would just love to have on and pick their brain?
Yeah, I just had Chelsea Handler on. It hasn't aired yet, but
that would be good.
Holy cow, that woman is amazing. I wanted to know, why is she always naked? I'm like, how are you that confident? How is it that possible?
That is 2 open books meeting each other. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Michelle Obama, hello.
Oh, amazing.
I would love to have her. We're getting Tiffany Haddish. We're really getting really great guests. So it's going to be really fun. That's
amazing. And I meant to say this at the beginning, but we are fellow official Webby Award honorees in the same category. We both. You too. And I was when that came out and I saw that you were right next to me, I felt pretty good having you. That's amazing company. And and
I feel the same way. That's awesome.
Yeah. And so but I think that speaks to just sort of like the level of your podcast and level of interview that you do every week. And, people are recognizing that. And that must feel really nice, right? Validating.
Yeah. For you too, right? It's like you could be working. And then somebody says, oh my God, I saw whatever you're doing and it's amazing. That feels so good.
Yeah, especially when you're really kind of putting your whole career behind it, and that is sort of, and I feel like for you again, this is sort of a transition for you where you're really embracing this different kind of platform for yourself. So again, to have that praise, you're doing something right, and I feel like you must get that feedback from fans too.
Yeah, it's been really nice. It's been really, really great. If I could get Michelle Obama, that would be amazing. Imagine that.
Hey, never say never, because I think it could totally happen. Winding down, I think, you're using all these different platforms to talk about open up issues that nobody wants to that nobody is willing to talk about, but they want to. And, you have The Real, you have your podcast and they're growing, and you have Housewives. And if you look at your Housewives experience, is there something what would you pinpoint as being sort of like the thing you like most about it and the thing that maybe you wish was different about it?
What I love most about it is I love that we have 8 independent, modern women with their own ideas, their own opinions, and we're doing our thing, right?
Yeah.
And if I had to say, the worst part is, some of the drama that, that happens through social media, that can be kind of hard. And then, of course, the mother of them all, the reunion.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Talk about self-care. I'm going to do self-care for 3 months before that thing happens.
I mean, and you had such a different experience
Self-care.
doing that last reunion. I feel like your first reunion being that virtual one, that's tough.
That was virtual was tough, but I can imagine that being in person could be tough too. But I'm going to be ready for it, and
Sure.
I think it's going to be, exactly what it's supposed to be.
Definitely. Well, Garcelle, there are so many different ways for people to interact with the stuff that you're doing, listen, watch, follow. What do you want to plug? And tell me where people can follow you after listening to this.
People can follow me on Instagram at Garcelle. And of course, please listen to Going to Bed with Garcelle on Spotify, Apple, anywhere. And also please go to tenna.usa for more of the messaging that we're relaying today, because that's really important.
Totally. Well, Garcelle, it was so fun to get time with you despite our technical difficulties. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your week. It was really fun to talk to you.
You too. Bye. Yeah. Congrats again.
Bye, Garcelle. Thank you. Bye. You too. Thank you so much for listening. For more celebrity interviews, subscribe to We Should Talk on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you heard, please rate and review us, as any show of support you can give us would be greatly appreciated. You can follow me at Gibsonoma on Twitter and Instagram, and you can follow In the Know at In the Know on Twitter and at Watch In the Know on Instagram. We'll talk to you next time.